Partnered by Times Influence.
In this concluding episode of the Economic Times Women's Forum, we bring to you the confluence of select voices who outline how women in family businesses, in the workforce and in neighboring countries are beating the gender bias by making an impact economically. First up, Andrea Jung, President and CEO of Grameen America Inc., addressed the forum.
I had the greatest opportunity to lead at a time when I was only one of 3 women CEOs at the time. That, by the way, 3 out of 500 rounds down to 0%. But it was an extremely interesting opportunity. Today, in the Fortune 500, there are 32 women. That rounds up now to 6%, which is better than 0, but that is 20 years, okay? 20 years later, not acceptable. It is still only 6%. I am encouraged, though. I am an optimist because I think the glass is half full. I know here in India, it's mandatory that all companies have 1 woman on the board. That is progress. It's a good start. It's not the end. But the gender gap is not just a gap in the boardroom or in the C-suite. It really still permeates, unfortunately, so many levels of society. I have spent the last 4 years at Grameen. I had the unbelievable opportunity to be on a panel, maybe in 2007, I think, with Muhammad Yunus and several other CEOs, and I was inspired by the work that he and the Grameen Bank had done in Bangladesh to really literally help take that country out and up of poverty by eliminating half of the poverty through the empowerment of half of the country's population. And that microfinance program and microcredit, which has spawned a complete industry, has done more to help enable women get financial inclusion. Many thought it wasn't possible to have microfinance be successful in the United States. We are 10 years now in the United States. We've served over 100,000 families. The repayment rate on non-collateral, no-recourse loans is 99.6%. Microcredit programs all over the world have proven that women repay those loans sometimes up to 40 points better repayment than men. When a woman earns $1, that dollar goes back to her family, to education, to health, and to society as a whole. Let me just end with a few of the words that people have said to me, some of the advice I have been given. The first was, I had a woman tell me, follow your compass, not your clock. Do what's in your heart, not just in your head. It's a long journey, and you have to have passion for work. Life is too short. There's no great life without great work, and there's no great work without great purpose and passion. The second piece of advice I was given, which I think I tell young people all the time, this is a world where industries are getting disrupted overnight, and you have to reinvent your companies or your businesses, but people are the reinvention. Companies can't reinvent themselves. Only leaders can reinvent. The third I got from my very good friend Steve Jobs at Apple before he died. I had the pleasure of working with him for several years, and he said to me 2 words, fail forward. If you're not making mistakes, he used to say, then you're not bold enough, you're not courageous enough, and you're not innovative enough. Fourth piece of advice, do good, not just do well, that it's a long journey. It's not just about profits and shareholders in business. Yes, they are important, but they are only one constituent. If you can find work that has purpose, if you can find work and do good at the same time in the company or on the side, we can't wait for government. We as individual leaders have to take the reins and have to make a difference socially as well as business-wise. So make sure you do good as well as do well. So I leave you with 3 questions. If not here, then where? If not now, when? And finally, if not us, then who? Thank you very much.
Next, we bring to you a panel discussion where the daughters of some of the biggest industrialists come together to discuss changing roles of daughters in the family business, their vision for the future, and bridging the gender gap.
14% or thereabouts in a survey are entrepreneurs that are women in India. But a minuscule number within that are indeed the women who are leading businesses in family-owned situations. The question, Ashni, is, so what did you have to do to get there, to be recognized, to have your father anoint you into the business and accept you there?
I never studied business. I studied design, and my first struggle was really to understand the ropes of business. The second really was to perhaps counter every criticism that came our way, counter every doubt. So I think the only way to do it is through a lot of hard work and just persisting and getting your way out there. Women in a consumer-centric business gives you a certain advantage. So that was really my edge. And as a thought leader, I made my mark, and the organization accepted me first, and then, I guess, my father.
Yeah. So, Namita.
I think, Naina, that's a great question because I definitely was expected to prove myself before I could join the business. And so I became a chartered accountant at the age of 21. And then I went abroad to do my MBA at Duke University. So I had to have 2 degrees. And I worked in the US for 7 years in a couple of public companies, multiple roles. And then I was considered competent and capable to join the family business. So it was pretty stereotypical in that sense. But I think it's good because of the degrees and the work experience abroad, that gave me a lot of credibility when I joined the business. And then, of course, that's just the starting point. After that, your work has to speak for itself.
In my case, it was quite different. It was never to start off to join a family business. I was set out to be an investment banker. I started from the manufacturing floor. I started out through the technology, the supply chain level, went through that grid, and then ended up starting out 2 biggest functions that the company has seen. So cultural changes, being a female, being the chairman's daughter, not knowing what kind of engineering setup where you were coming from, to now really understanding the nitty-gritty through literally climbing the ladder up.
How were you perceived in the business, given that you had a male sibling, and how did the family determine who took charge of what?
So fortunately, me and my brother, since our stepping stone of ages, we never went into a competition with each other. It somehow became that the societal norm came out to compete us with each other. So where we didn't have anything against each other, everybody would come and question me. What is it that your brother's going to do? How come you're in the title of running a public-based company, which is the biggest in your portfolio, and your brother's starting out a whole new venture of, working in a power sector company? Is it a transition setup that you're doing, then he's going to take over? So all sorts of these questions ended up coming. But I think what really helped was, at least between us as siblings, the inter-rivalry didn't happen.
So what percentage of women do you have in your company?
We have about 4%.
4%.
And that is dramatically low. And reason is, of course, it's hardcore engineering energy companies. It's very difficult to get that number up. But luckily, we have now targeted the quadrupling of this number by 2022.
So how?
So that's a steep target. These areas, we're putting in basic hygiene facilities. We're providing the relevant childcare facilities, which are encouraging more women to come in. We're creating an ecosystem.
Yeah. So Namita, at your organization, women, and how are you enabling and helping?
Right. So we have, at MQ, we have 10,000 employees. 6,000 are in the sales positions pan-India. And sales is very difficult for women, but the 4,000 women who are more in Pune, we have 10%. So we had a lot of policies in place, whether that's women speakers, some of the flexible time kind of arrangements, networking lunches with women mentors. So we put a lot of policies in place, and we've gone from 5% to 10% in a span of 5 years. But of course, that's a very small number. And we hope that with new policies and more efforts, we can get to a much higher number.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ashni, you just said that you're already at a third of your...
Right. So we have around 25 to 30% women employees all across the group. I think we're very fortunate to have that diversity. It's important to our business to have that diversity. we do very, very simple things at the store. One of my biggest challenges was to use dirty toilets. So one of the things that we've done as an organization is create the best fun rooms, fun zones as we call it, and we have special toilets for women at the back of our stores that are managed and maintained by them only.
I used to often say I would assess a company on its women friendliness by the toilet quotient. Curious about the fact that given how few of you there are, that the coming together hasn't happened, and we need a group of exactly women such as these who can come together, and the aspiring ones who can be mentored. But your thoughts on this, because it will need your time. How would you carve out time to be mentors to others?
People who are in positions of privilege and power have a larger responsibility to give back. And I do hope we can see more of that in the coming years, Naina.
From women like you, why aren't you being able to give your voice and time to encouraging others?
I agree. I don't think we give enough time to it. I think in the same place, we women are working 5 times harder than our male counterparts. So that's where the energy is perhaps getting lost.
So I think probably one of the reasons why we haven't got around to becoming so much in these kind of group orientation is probably that individually there's been so much of struggle and fight to get to where we are. I think good to have a forum like ET, and even a mentor like you, I would say, to take us to that level where we can be an example setter.
What they could do and should do to become more like you?
I think the most important thing is really to not give up. I think it's really hard, but you just got to stay the course.
Guilt management, just get an A+ in that. And secondly, like Steve Jobs says, that don't let the noise outside drown your inner voice.
So one thing starting out, I would say, it really helped to see when you're coming in from a family business not to get stuck into this aspect of entitlement. With the millennials, you often see that this entitlement factor comes in before the hard work comes in. So I would always say try to get out first before you join your family business. But I think it helps to get a benchmark, get an understanding of not your own bubble and creation. That I always feel with the millennials or the entitles or the family business, never to take it that I'm here to deal in power. I'm here to give respect back. I'm here to support, and I'm here to do the best I can. So I think stick the course.
Welcome back to the special coverage of the Economic Times Women's Forum. While Indian women are breaking glass ceilings in different areas, women from neighboring countries come together to talk about ways in which this bias is practiced and how it is being addressed.
Otara Gunawardene, Fauzia Kufi, Sara Ali, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here. So how many have been to Sri Lanka and gone to the department store known as Odell? Everybody's been to Odell? She's Odell. No family background in business, no help from the family, a lone woman with a degree in biology who started her business from the back of her old station wagon. Yes. What drove you? Ambition, pure luck, persistence?
Well, actually, it was what drove me was animals and the environment. I actually started the business to raise funds to help elephants and to help other animals. That's why I started it. So my degree is in biology because my whole dream was to live in the jungles and look after wildlife and animals.
Anna, you of course have a family background in business.
Yes.
And your parents are very, very successful business people. Did you feel that when you started Bitopi advertising, you had something to prove? You wanted to prove yourself?
Yes, I mean, I had a lot to prove because, well, I didn't start Bitopi. Bitopi was started by my father in 1968, and it's one of the oldest and the largest. So I had to fit in really big shoes, and I rose from the bottom. Actually, I didn't start off as a managing director. I started off learning in the business, and then finally, after 8 years, I became the managing director.
Azia Kufi, you know, when I was reading your bio, my eyes were popping. You are the 19th child of 23 children. And when you were born, your mother didn't want a daughter, and she left you out in the sun to burn. And she then had a change of heart and took you back in again. So you've been a fighter since birth.
Well, I guess as a woman, our fight starts when we are born. When you are born as a woman, you have to make double efforts to prove yourself. The first thing that you perhaps as a girl experience is the family's image. The family image towards yourself is when you are born as a girl, your family will regard you as you are the property of somebody else. You will grow up and then get married to somebody. So they never regard you as part of the family. When you grow up and then you get married, then your husband's family will regard you as daughter of somebody else. And then you have to struggle there to make you part of everything. So that is where your struggle starts, when you are born, from the day you are born. And exactly my struggle is not different from many women who are sitting here and many who are not sitting here but watching us. Right. It's the struggle of equality and the struggle of proving yourself. I always believe that we have to set our goals ambitious. Right. We have to dream higher because our parents, your parents, our parents, all of us, mothers, women, generation before us, did something different. Right. And this is because of their efforts that we are sitting here now.
Right.
We have to set rules for the future so that our daughters could, or our children could have a better life. Now, if I have this feeling that the new generation all over the world has this sense of self-satisfaction. As long as they have a job, they have a computer, they have a salary, they're satisfied.
Yes.
Which I think this will actually contribute to a world of inequality if we are satisfied with what we are today.
Should more and more women come into politics? Do you believe that that's the way? In Afghanistan particularly, should women be in politics to bring change?
I believe more women should come into politics in Afghanistan, but also in India. Right. I mean, you should actually have a quota.
27% women in Afghanistan.
That's right. Yes. We have a quota on which basis 25% of the total parliamentarians should be women, which I guess you also do need a quota for your National Assembly. Yes. We kind of set boundaries for ourselves that this is a very difficult profession, so not for women. You know, security, this is an area which shouldn't women get involved. Economic affairs, this is an area which, you know, women are made for softer jobs. I think we need to have women in the untouchable places. We need to have women where there is a red line. You know, unfortunately, the world is still very unequal.
Is it important to have women tokens? Do they matter? Because I know that Sirima Bandanaike, Chandrika Kumaratunga, these are big, powerful women in Sri Lanka.
Well, in Sri Lanka, 52% is female, so we are the dominant gender in number. I mean, it definitely helps and shows that, you know, you can get there. I was able to do what I wanted to do, you know, because I had the possibility to do that, but there's a lot of also lack of opportunity for a lot of women, and I think that's a lot of the reason why they can't move up in the world, and, you know, from the poverty that they are in, because their daily struggle is always on, you know, how to find the food, how to find the water, how to feed the family. So I think on that side, equal opportunity is much needed for a much larger portion of both women and men.
Successful women don't have friends. Successful women make a lot of enemies. How do you deal with all the enemies online? I've seen the kind of trolling you get and the kind of attacks you get. Is your policy confrontation? Is it ignore? How do you deal with it?
You just have to have your belief, and you have to know that what you're doing is, as long as what you're doing is good and for the benefit of many lives, and you just want to change lives for the better and change your country or the world for something that's better and something that's been wrong in the past, which is what, you know, I advocate for animal welfare, for protecting the environment and causes like that. I have seen in my country how more and more women are struggling so much because of the drought, or because of the sudden floods which were never there, or intense drought, which makes it harder for them to find water for their families, and which makes it even harder for them to move up in the world.
Right.
So you know, you just have to know that is your belief, and you know in your heart that it's right.
Stick to your belief.
And you just have to keep going.
As women, if you become stronger, you find more enemies.
Right.
So see it that way. If you have more people that are opposing you, means that you have been impactful, you have been effective in what you do.
The more times you fall, the more times you have the opportunity to stand up. Uttara Gunawardene, Fauzia Kufi, Sara Ali, thank you very much indeed for joining us. What a lovely showcase of South Asia and South Asian womanhood.
In our next session, we will discuss the long-term economical and social impact of the number of women dropping out of the workforce.
Aki, talk about the current status of women in the workforce in India. And when it comes to numbers, the ranking by a recent survey is about 120 out of 130 in worldwide, the Indian ranking. Why do you think that is?
So, it's a very sobering thought. As economic growth progresses, there is this increasing phenomena of women dropping off from the workforce. And let's just unpeel this data and understand why this is happening. The World Bank put out a study recently, and it was very instructive in terms of what's going on. One of the two factors is, of course, economic, which is as women move up the economic pyramid, they want more meaningful work. And the second factor is what we have struggled with forever, which is our normative factors, our society and our norms. It is the central question is that what is the agency which a woman has? Is her work really valued by the family? There is a study which we in Facebook had commissioned in 2016 with development economics, and what we found is that the biggest barriers to women holding back or dropping off from the workforce those constraints are essentially family and domestic commitments. The study also showed us that 4 out of 5 women do want to start a business on their own or want to be in valuable economic value-creating roles. But that is just not happening because of this conflict, of these conflicts which we are seeing playing out.
You're from Facebook. When social media is used as a tool, sometimes life-changing things can happen. So tell us, what is Facebook doing in this vein to create an impact?
We've invested in a national program of She Means Business. The program essentially involves in working with small and medium entrepreneurs to help them build successful business and access global markets via Facebook and build their own brand recognition. The program now has been offered in more than 6 states. It's active in 18 cities. We have created a network of 12,000 women entrepreneurs. So one very interesting data point which we found is that if you look at management control or women-led startups, it's only 9% in India. So you can see the mismatch, right, in terms of what the inflow is and what is the share which women have. The barriers there, again, this is a network play, and also mentorship is key here, is that we started this program which is called She Leads Tech. 8 months into the program, we've had 100 women-led startups join it, and they have access to Facebook FB Start tools, as well as they get publicity on the platform of their businesses and their websites, plus access to this peer community and mentorship, which is key.
Talk about a very pertinent issue, and putting in place a robust sexual harassment policy in the workplace is absolutely imperative, and I'm sure everyone in the audience agrees. What has been your experience in Facebook?
So in December of 2017 of last year, we were the first company to do this. We put out in the public domain our internal workplace policies against bullying and harassment, including sexual harassment. This is, I think, it's a very important priority for all companies. We put it out there in order to make sure that this conversation at least starts and people are sharing their experiences in terms of people practices and are learning from each other. I also fundamentally think it's a we job, it's not an I job, in terms of making sure that we have a respectful workplace and a workplace that is safe. It's a commitment which we all have to make, men and women both. The best way in terms of addressing this is making sure that you have policies, you over-communicate those policies, make sure you're training your workforce, and then have enforcement practices which are fairly well published so that employees know what is expected of them in terms of workplace conduct.
Thank you so much, Aki, for taking time out and giving us an insight into women in the workforce.
That brings us to the end of the special coverage of the Economic Times Women's Forum, where we discussed how we can really empower women to write the next chapter of India's growth story and unleash the power of 500 million.
Partnered by Times Influence.